Standing by. Good morning to you, Phil.
How you doing, lads? I'm back again.
Donald Trump last night. Jose Mourinho effort. Are you having that?
Jose certainly is somebody that would never really admit defeat. I mean, we often heard him say in the past about how the better team didn't win. I think back to the 2005 Champions League semi-final between Chelsea and Liverpool, and if he was going to admit defeat, he wouldn't do it in a very gracious way. But he's got his mojo back because he's at Spurs. Obviously, you know, they're starting to win games. There's expectation in Spurs, but not the same level of expectation he had when he was at Manchester United or Chelsea. So, yeah, he seems to be relishing this role of trying to win some silverware with Spurs. And, you know, they're still obviously flying in the Europa League, in the League Cup as well. And given the nature of this Premier League season, a lot of people think, do you know what, they mightn't be far off a Premier League title, but only time will tell. Looking at their fixtures, obviously they have a handy enough one against West Brom this weekend, but after the international break they play City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool and Leicester. And you throw on top of that the games in the Cup I mentioned, the Carabao Cup, the Europa League. Interesting enough, the win against Ludogorets last night, he went with a strong starting 11, and he could point at last week's performance in Antwerp why he didn't pick some of his second string team, because they lost. So he went with a strong team. Obviously Harry Kane played, he scored his 200th goal for Spurs, so he's 66 behind Jimmy Greaves now, and I've always felt that Kane is going to stay at Spurs and try and break that record.
That's in your might watch category this weekend. That Spurs trip to West Brom. The must watch, City Liverpool 4:30 on Sunday. So what are we expecting here, Phil? This Diego Jota masterclass again. He scores a hat-trick, Liverpool win 5-0, and Pep is on the brink.
I don't know. I think the feeling about this game, it's not as important as it has been in the previous two seasons, because obviously it was a pivotal game, not last season but the season before, when Sané scored the winner, and you know that kind of tilted things towards City, and they went on and won the league. Last season, I mean, it didn't matter. Liverpool were still drunk from winning actually being officially crowned champions a few days beforehand. I remember Andy Robertson in particular had a shocker of the game, and you know, the nature of this season, teams have already lost. Like Liverpool have been hammered, City have been hammered. So, you know, whoever loses, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, it's a massive blow to their title ambitions. Now, saying that, I think City need to win it more than Liverpool. But if Liverpool, I think if Liverpool were to go to the Etihad on Sunday and beat City without Virgil van Dijk, basically, you know, it would be a message to say, we don't need Van Dijk, we can still win the league, we don't need him. And it'll be interesting to see the team selection, because one thing I've noticed about City, they're not free-flowing, they're not scoring goals at the moment. I wonder, they've only outscored their opponents once in the second half this season, and that was the league game against West Ham when Phil Foden scored. So I wonder, does Klopp actually hold Jota back for the second half? Maybe does he go with Firmino and keep things a bit tighter? And we know the work rate Firmino gives you. And
surely not. Surely he's looking at a guy who's banging form. Surely you can't say to Diego Jota now, as one of the Premier League most informed players in Europe and the biggest game of this magnitude, that he's on the bench.
No, I'm not. I get that logic. I'm just trying to second guess Jurgen Klopp, maybe the fact that if City are not as efficient in the second half, and you think of what Leicester did to them in the second half of the Etihad, if the game is tight in the first half where there's very little in it anyway, and then, you know, players get a bit more fatigued in the second half, and then Jota comes on and can absolutely run amok. That's just one theory I have. Now, he could well go with Jota, Mane and Salah and say to them, you know, if you're at it from the start, go at City. Because one thing we've seen with City, when they go behind, they don't tend to overturn results, especially in the Premier League. Whereas if City score first, like they have done a lot this season, the thing for Liverpool is just to stay in there. Don't let them get that second goal, because once there's only 1-0, you know, City don't close games out the way they used to. And yeah, like psychologically, I think if Liverpool win on Sunday, it strikes a massive blow to City's title hopes. But as I said, I just don't think it's as important as it has been, because it's not as if you're looking at teams finishing with 100 points this season. That's just not going to happen.
I'm starting to look at this Manchester City defence, Phil, and starting to think they're really onto something here. Like Ruben Dias, to me, looks like an exceptional signing. Himself and Laporte starting to play some games together, which is really important. Kyle Walker obviously scored the winner last weekend. But at left back, you've got Cancelo now, who is playing really, really good football. They seem to have a flat back forward that is working for them. Of course, you can throw in Nathan Ake. They can play that bizarre defensive formation that they did against Arsenal. But that also worked as well. There's almost a flexibility around the City defence, and it's starting to look really solid. I presume a byproduct of that Leicester hammering.
Yeah, and this is what happens with City when they obviously retain possession. The defence isn't tested as much. But you look at last week's game, Sheffield United barely attacked them. They obviously beat Olympiacos during the week. Their games in Europe are games you expect them to win. Left back has been an issue. We've seen in big games, Guardiola before has made a big call at left back. I can remember Laporte actually playing as a left back at Anfield before. So I've said this before, I wouldn't be surprised if Nathan Ake someday plays as a left back. Maybe this Sunday is the day for it. But this City back four, we will only realise how good they are or how good they can be until when we see them tested against one of the best attacks. If they don't have the protection, then they haven't got a chance. So as good as they've been, and the stats will certainly back that up, that, when you're asked to defend one-on-one against some of the best attackers, there's only so much you can do. And I just don't think Rodri is that protective player that Fernandinho is. He's a different type of player. But yeah, this will be the ultimate test. Ruben Diaz has come in nice and he's settled into the team nicely, but this will be the ultimate test. I suppose one thing, you're looking back at last night's games and Nicolas Otamendi gets sent off for Benfica against Rangers, and that was part of the Diaz deal. And they said it was separate, but I'm sure there was an agreement there. But City are in a position where they don't have to play lads like John Stones or Otamendi, so that can only be a good thing for them.
So we're saying that all of that is like 4-0 instead to Liverpool, that this rampant Liverpool attack, they won't be quenched by Ruben Diaz or anybody else. I'm going to assume that's where we're at in Man City, Liverpool. Everton United fell half 12.
Must watch, yeah.
Must watch. So, obviously, there's the United hierarchy have been out to say no matter what happens, Ole is still going to get the job. And, the talk of Poch and Rodgers, who were best buds on Monday Night Football now, is through the roof. Poch more so. But what's your Brendan Rodgers at Manchester United in terms of a fit? He's surely on form, needs to be leading that conversation.
No, absolutely not. How can Brendan Rodgers be Manchester United manager? He was the Liverpool manager. I mean, if you've got a fan base that are pretty much against you, the last thing you do is hire the former Liverpool manager, who, by the way, didn't win the league. So it's not, if Brendan Rodgers had won 2 or 3 Premier League titles with Liverpool and then he gets the United job, United fans would think, oh, well, at least he's won trophies. He hasn't. So you don't go near Brendan Rodgers. And everything is going well for Brendan Rodgers at the moment. But we've seen this before where, when they have momentum behind them, Rodgers' teams tend to do very well. But the wheels can come off and, it's still very, very early days. They've actually got a tricky game on Sunday against Wolves, and then they play Liverpool after the international break. But Pochettino, it was a nice little appearance on TV on Monday night. It was the timing of it was perfect. Obviously came off the back of Arsenal beating Manchester United, and little did we know that United were going to be beaten in Istanbul as well. So Pochettino's name has been mentioned. What happens if United do what they've done before under Solskjaer, where you think they're gone, they're done? Think of Burnley last season at Old Trafford. Liverpool had beaten United, then they go and they lose to Burnley. You think that's all he'd done. What do? They go unbeaten in the league for the rest of the season. They've got this knack of pulling out results. So if they beat Everton tomorrow with a counter-attacking performance where Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial and Bruno Fernandes all click, does that mean Solskjaer is amazing again? Because just over a week ago, he was class. They beat Leipzig 5-0. I mean, outsmarted Nagelsmann. But this is the problem with United, is they have some great results, they have some bad ones, and the focus on the bad ones is always going to override the positive results. And I've always felt that Solskjaer will get results because he's got a talented squad. Some players are not good enough to play for Manchester United, but my general feeling is if they persist with Solskjaer, that is a bigger risk than if they don't change the manager.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear you right off, B-Raj, and you're doing it just based on the basis that he was former Liverpool manager. Like, I mean, surely he goes in. So this is a guy with obviously a track record of working with top elite players, some of which he's currently working with, more of which he's worked with at Liverpool. Like, he brought the best out of Luis Suarez. Nobody would have heard of Luis Suarez. You know, Brendan Rodgers will tell you this himself. He would have been just a bang average player, but Rodgers brought the best out of him. And like, presumably, Philly goes in and he starts getting a couple of results, and everybody forgets about what he did up the road.
Well, that's all well and good, and I would imagine whoever gets the United job, as soon as they go in, they will get a positive reaction from the players, like Solskjaer did when Mourinho left. And that's what happens. We hear of the new manager bounce all the time, but what happens if Rodgers was the Manchester United manager, I still don't think it'll ever happen, but if he was and you get a few bad results, straight away it's thrown at him as like, sure, he used to manage Liverpool. We don't want him here. Mm. So I'm not having the Brendan Rodgers thing. I think Pochettino looks like the most realistic appointment at the moment. They might have to get their skates on though, because things not going great for PSG. Pochettino used to play for PSG. That's an obvious link as well. And you know, I'm sure he'd like to work with the likes of Neymar and Mbappe rather than Jesse Lingard and Fred.
Everton, obviously the form team. Phil, briefly, who's going to win that?
I actually think it'll be a draw. Everton have kind of fallen off a bit. Very good first 11, but just the injuries. Coleman might be back tomorrow. We know Luca Dean is back. Don't know if James Rodriguez is over his injury yet, and Richarlison is still out, suspended. But Dominic Calvert-Lewin up against that United defence, he'd be looking to get back on the goal trail. And I think it's a fixture that's been tricky for United over the last few seasons. And if you think back to when David Moyes was sacked as United manager, his last game was a defeat away to Everton. The last game for Mourinho was against a Merseyside team as well. So there is history there that United manager's last game is against a Merseyside team. So maybe it's written in the stars that Ollie bows out after this weekend.
You've Leicester Wolves in the must-watch category. You've Chelsea, Sheffield United in there as well. You're not watching Brighton, Burnley or West Ham, Fulham, which I think nobody's going to give you too much argument with. Southampton, Newcastle in the might watch. West Brom, Spurs, as we mentioned, in the might watch. Arsenal, Villa are there. I'm slightly surprised that you have Palace and Leeds only in the might watch category. Like, you know, Leeds still doing fine, 10 points in the bag. We got very excited about them earlier on. Maybe things leveled out a bit, but they'll do okay. There'll be occasions where they get a good hiding, like they did against Leicester the last day. Maybe fancying them to get the job done against Palace.
Yeah, I think they've missed Calvin Phillips big time, and it is fine margins. You saw watching them against Leicester on Monday. It's just the same. They play the same way the whole time, and some days it'll work, some days it won't. You know, on another day that Fernandez goal goes in and they get 2-2 with Leicester, and then the game's in the mix going into the last few minutes. But you saw against Aston Villa, you know, they cleared one off the line, but then Patrick Bamford scores a hat-trick. They are great to watch. I suppose the way things are now, when we started doing this must-watch, might-watch, won't-watch, it was pretty much just Premier League only at the moment. There's competition now. You guys have just been doing your GAA predictions. Even the Man City and Liverpool game clashes with the Cork and Kerry game. You can two-screen it. Now, I did that last week, but I found myself getting frustrated watching Donegal Tyrone because I couldn't see what was going on because there was rain on the camera. So there is a lot of competition for what you want to watch, and that's why certain games are being put into Might Watch. And Might Watch can be a game where you have it on, but you dip in and out of it. You could be pottering around the house. You could be, you know, taking the dog for a walk for 10 minutes, but you come back to it. But where I say must watch, it's you sit down uninterrupted. If the doorbell rings, you don't answer it. I mean,
come on, Phil.
It doesn't matter who it is.
The small number of games in your must watch. But look, we'll catch up with you next week. Come on, enjoy the games over the weekend. Cheers. Thanks a lot, Phil Egan, there on the line to look ahead to the weekend's Premier League. That's pretty much it from the weekend.